Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Hope everybody's well, inshallah. We'll get started, inshallah. So again, this is our weekly Q&A slash Saturday Night Live or whatever we want to call it. I don't know if the camera is just dirty. A little better, inshallah. Again, as normal, you can send your questions in, inshallah. We have a few questions that some people have already sent in. Some important discussions we'll be having today. Somebody's asked regarding wills, how to set up a will, etc. It's many people are concerned about this, so that's a question that's coming as well. Funerals, etc. There's a question of that sort that's coming also. So there's a number of questions that have come in, inshallah, which we'll be going through. Also, if you have any other questions, you can send them through as well. Just wait a few moments as people come in. Actually, whilst we're waiting, let's do what we did last week, inshallah. We'll just start with a story of some sort. So by the time people come, inshallah, we can get started, inshallah. So there was a question which was asked, which kind of leads into a story. So let's do that, inshallah. The question that was asked is, look, when we do good deeds, can we ask Allah by means of these good deeds that He gives us something? So let me give you an example. For example, I pray Salah, for example, I pray Tahajjud or something like that. And so the question, let me just straighten the camera up. So I pray Tahajjud or something like that. Can I ask Allah by means of this Tahajjud or this Salah or something like that? Can I ask Allah to give me goodness? And so there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ which is found in Bukhari, a beautiful hadith which is narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And he says in this hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned بينما ثلاثة نفر. There were three individuals, three men who were walking. يمشون أخذهم المطر, and it started raining. It started raining profusely. So they thought, you know what, it's raining, let's take refuge. فأووا إلى غار في جبل. They took refuge in a mountain. Right, and so they went into a cave and they took refuge. فَانْحَطَّتْ عَلَى فَمِ غَارِهِمْ صَخْرَةٌ مِّنَ الْجَبَلِ. Once they had gone into the cave and they'd been there for a while, the rocks in the cave fell and they collapsed in on themselves. And what happened is it blocked the entrance, the mouth of the cave. It closed the mouth of the cave. So فَقَالَ بَعْضُهُمْ لِبَعْضٍ. They said to one another, that انظروا أعمالا, that okay, we need to do something. So they said, انظروا أعمالا, think of some good deed that you've done. عملتموها صالحة لله, which you have done sincerely for Allah. فادعوا الله بها, and we ask Allah by using these as a reference, invoking Allah by reference of these deeds, right? And we'll ask Allah, لعله يفرجها عنكم, it's possible Allah will remove this rock from us. So قال أحدهم, one of them said, okay. اللهم, oh Allah, إنه كان لي والدان شيخان كبيران. I had two elderly parents. And ولي صبية صغار كنت أرعى عليهم. And I had some young children who I used to actually take care of, etc. And I used to graze sheep, etc. for them. So فإذا رحت عليهم حلبت فبدأت بوالدي. When I used to come back with the milk for the family, I used to start with my parents. أسقيهما قبل بنية. I used to give them milk before I used to give it to my children. وإني استأخرت ذات يوم. One day I got late. I was delayed. فلم آتي حتى أمسيت. And I didn't get back until it was quite late. And so when I got back and I realized that my parents, they'd actually fallen asleep. So then I thought, what do I do now? I didn't want to wake them up, and I didn't want to I disliked to give my children the milk first. Now he goes, although my children are hungry, and they were making a big fuss about, that they're hungry, etc., etc. And so he goes that what I did was I stood before my parents the entire night waiting for them to wake up. He said, oh Allah, if I did this for you and for your sake only, then remove this rock so that we can move on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed the rock a little bit, and they saw the sky. They saw the sky. Thereafter, the second man said, okay, oh Allah, Allahumma, oh Allah, I was in love with a cousin of mine, and I had the deepest love for this cousin of mine, such love that nobody else would have this kind of love. And I wanted to fulfill my desires with her. And so, when I wanted to fulfill my desire, she'd say no. One day she was in need, and she came to me and she said that I need some money. So he said, I'll give you 100 dinars on the condition that you fulfill my needs. So she said, no, I can't do this. I can't. He said, sorry. She said, please, please. So he said, nope. So she was in a state of dire need and necessity. So then she said, fine, okay, fine. She goes that they were about to commit the deed when the woman said, fear Allah, ittaqillah, and do not take that which is not rightfully yours. So he says that I stopped. Oh Allah, I stopped. Allah, if I did this for your sake and your sake alone, and out of fear of you, Allah removed the rock. The rock shifted a little more. And the third man said, oh Allah, look, I employed a laborer. I took somebody to work for me. And for one faraq of rice, a very small amount of rice, there's a beautiful lesson at the end of this hadith. He says, for one faraq of rice. And he says that when he finished his job and he said, give me my rights, I presented to him what he deserved, but he didn't take it at the time. He refused to take it. So I thought, fine, and maybe whatever. So I used that rice and I sowed it until I sowed the rice so much that I got, each time I would get a yield of more rice and more rice, and then with that rice, the money from that rice, I bought cows and I bought this and I bought that and all of these things, and I got a big flock, etc., of cows and everything, and I even then hired a shepherd and everything. After some time, the man said, look, fear Allah, give me my right. I want that rice. He says to the individual, go and take all of the cows and the shepherd and everything that you see. So that man said, look, ittaqillah, fear Allah, don't mock me. Don't take the ولا تستهزئ بي. Don't take the mick out of me. He says, I'm not mocking you. إني لا أستهزئ بك. فخذ, take it. All of it is yours. He says, why? Because I invested it. That was yours. So everything that came out of it is yours. That individual said, oh Allah, if I did that for your sake only, please remove the rest of the rock. Allah removed the entire rock. What do we learn from this? It's a very important lesson, and that's why we started with this. We are in a time where certain things have happened. The COVID-19 is here, and this and that, and different things are happening. The question here is that what's happening in this hadith? In this hadith, we're learning that by means of your good deeds, you can remove difficulties from your life. And by means of your evil deeds, difficulties will come in your life. What's the proof of the evil deeds one? There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when you drink water, the dua you read is what? Alhamdulillahi alladhi saqana adhban furatan bi rahmatihi wa lam yaj'alhu milhan ujajan bi dhunubina. All praise belongs to Allah, the one who He gave us something cool to drink and sweet to drink. وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْهُ مِلْحًا أُجَاجًا. He didn't make it bitter and He didn't make it sour. بِذُنُوبِنَا, as a result of our sins. What does this teach us? As a result of your sins, it can have a physical implication or manifestation in your life. Allah can cause some challenges and difficulties to come to an individual because of sins that a person does, and Allah can alleviate these sins and these difficulties because of good that we do. And so the question was that can a person use his good deeds, and can a person make dua to Allah that, oh Allah, by means of this good deed, make this difficulty go? Yes, you can. And so by doing good deeds, maybe reading tahajjud or reading a Quran khatam or something like that, completing the Quran and saying, oh Allah, by means of this, remove this calamity, remove this difficulty, inshallah, it can happen. And a person can use this, inshallah, as a means. Assalamu alaikum. How can we do Taraweeh at home? Can you read from the Quran? Okay. That's a very technical question. So for the general person, a person for Taraweeh, again, it's a nafal prayer. It's a sunnah prayer. It's not necessary that a person does Taraweeh, but of course, Ramadan, synonymous. Fasting and Taraweeh come together. And so if you ask somebody what's Ramadan, what's the difference in Ramadan? It's your fasting and it's your Taraweeh that takes place. How should a person do Taraweeh in the home? In the home, if there's a huffaz, if there's a person who's a hafid, of course, then they should try and lead the salah and they should try and do a full completion of the Quran. If there's no huffaz in the home, it's not necessary to read the entire Quran. You read what you can. So, for example, you read whatever surah you can. You do 20 rak'at a day, and you read your Taraweeh like that. And so a person can complete the Taraweeh salah like that. Now, this is important to understand. There are some scholars who've given the opinion that a person can pray salah looking inside the Quran for nafal. Now, from the Hanafi school of thought, the scholars are not inclined to this opinion. Other schools of thought are inclined towards this opinion. However, let's wait. I have a feeling, because I'm speaking to a number of scholars, I have a feeling that the fatwa will be quite interesting in the next few days that will come out in this regard. And so let's wait for that, inshallah. But in regard to the fiqh side of stuff, in terms of a person, I've just been told a message and there's vibrations in the microphone. In terms of a person thingy reading from the Mus'haf, so from the Hanafi perspective, the concern is there's something called amal kathir. So you're moving too much. So you're taking a Mus'haf, you're moving it, putting it down, all of these things. So because of the Mus'haf movement, etc., some scholars have disagreed. But then some scholars have turned around and said, well, what if somebody's using their mobile? They literally, mobile is in airplane mode. They just pull the mobile out the pocket, use the mobile to read, put it back in. Khalas, what's the issue with that? And so there's a number of discussions that come into this. So that will need more time. And so we will discuss that, inshallah. There was a question that was asked, which is quite important, which I want to touch on, which is wills, because this is a very, very important time for us to discuss this. And so this is going to be a bit of a lengthy conversation, but I think it's a very important conversation, and that we have this one now. So the question that was really asked was, in light of the current situation, a lot of families are thinking about wills and funeral costs. Can this be a topic covered as a lecture in the coming days or weeks? So I thought, let's mention it in the Q&A, inshallah. So you're going to have to focus. There's a bit of detail in this, and so inshallah we'll go through detail. We're not going to do it that briefly, but we're not also going to make it into a lecture specifically on wills and that kind of thing. So again, the question is, there are a lot of people are thinking about wills and funeral costs. Can we discuss this? So what's a will? Because the reason, by the way, a number of people have asked this. I think 4 or 5 people have asked me about wills, and so I thought, let me look into it properly and let's give it some thought. So what's a will? Basically, a will is a legally binding document, and it gives instructions on the way that your estate or the assets that you leave behind should be distributed. So you pass away, this document will decide on how your estate is basically what you leave behind when you die. How is that going to be distributed? Now, why do we need a will? Well, if you don't leave a will, what happens is the laws of intestacy apply. Intestacy are basically the laws that apply when you die without a will. So if you die without a will, then your wealth will be distributed according to the domestic law of the country or land that you live in. So let me explain that again. So you need a will. Why? If you don't leave a will, the rules that will apply to all of your wealth after you pass away will be based on domestic law. Whatever the legal system says that this happens with your wealth, that will happen with your wealth. Now, in most Muslim countries, you don't have an issue because the laws of intestacy are derived from the Quran and Sunnah. So that's great for the residents of these countries, because even if they don't have a will, they fulfill their Islamic obligation. They'll die and their will be distributed according to the Islamic law. However, in the West, conventionally, how it works is, in a will, you can distribute to whoever you want, however much you want. That's it. There's no discussions about this. So in the West, this is how it is. You give as much as you want to whoever you want, all of these things. And by the way, you'll find instances, there's articles you'll find of people distributing their wealth to pets that they own, like a cat or something like that. In February 2019, I was checking this out. There was an article of somebody who actually gave all of his wealth to his cat. Yani, the possession of his wealth, he made the owner of this wealth his cat. And so this is what will happen in the West. And you'll have somebody giving all of it here or all of it there. So the question is now, okay, fine, you have a conventional will, which you do what you want with it in the West, give however much you want to whoever you want. That's fine. What's the difference between a standard or conventional will and an Islamic one? There's really only one key difference. And the difference is Islam has preset inheritance values for specific individuals. What that means is, it's very simple. It means that your wealth will be split into 3 chunks. 2 of those chunks will go to certain individuals who the religion has stipulated. So you've got 3 chunks of your wealth. You've left £3,000, for example. £2,000 will be given to very specific people, father, mother, children, etc., etc. It will be fixed for those individuals. And 1 chunk will be left at your discretion. You can do whatever you want with this money. Meaning, you can give it to in charity, you can give it to a friend, you can give it to this, you can give it to a mosque, you can do whatever you want to do. Now, we don't want to go into numbers and details because this isn't the platform for that. However, making a will is extremely important. That's the first thing. From an Islamic perspective, there's a hadith which indicates upon the importance of leaving a will. You need to leave a will that sets out all of that out in detail. That I want this money to go here, this money to go here, this money to go here. Why? Because domestic laws will otherwise, if you don't leave a will, they will revert to the laws of intestacy. And like I said, those are not the laws of Islam. So your money will be distributed like this, like this, like this, but that's not the Islamic way. And you will be held responsible for that. This is very important. See, if you leave a will and you've done your level best and then people don't distribute your money, that's different. But you need to make sure that you've set a will out and you've put the proper measures in action, that when I die, I want my money distributed like this, like this, like this. Now, As long as you detail how you want your assets to be distributed, English law or any other domestic law really will not interfere with that. So the question is, fine, if the rules are fixed from Islam, well, what's the point of making a will? And you might as well just say that when I die, Islamic will, everybody apply it. Why would you go out and write a will? What's the point of going out of your way and writing the will? So apart from the religious reasons that Hadith mentioned, which have been mentioned and etc., here's a few reasons that you might want to make a will and you should make a will. Number one, you'll avoid massive family disputes by creating a legally binding will that specifies how your wealth should be distributed. I'm telling you, so many cases come where somebody passes away and then somebody comes and says that, look, this person's passed away and he left all the wealth for this person, but he's saying that no, the dad left it for me, but he's saying no, let's do it the Islamic way. And the thing is, what happens is sometimes, for example, there's three brothers. I'll give you an example. Three brothers, and one brother takes care of the father. So the father wants to leave more money for this one brother. So the father will say, okay, I'll give all my money to this brother. And so he says that. And then when the father passes away, everybody's expecting an Islamic distribution, but the father's written it for this one brother. This one brother's thinking, hey, you know what? It's true though. I did all this work and I did all this in my lifetime. I looked after that. It should all come to me. And so he'll say, nope, I'm not giving it up. Legally, you can't argue with him because legally, the legal courts will say that no, it's written in the will. It's going to the brother. And the other two brothers are like, well, from an Islamic perspective, we should get something. What does this cause? Causes family disputes. These two brothers will forever hate this brother, even if he didn't do anything wrong. Well, he did do something wrong. He should have then said that, well, let's distribute it Islamically. It causes disputes. It causes disagreements and kickoffs. And then he'll say, I'm never going to speak to you again. I'm never going to come to your funeral. And so benefit number one is you'll avoid family disputes. Benefit number two, you will save your inheritors, the people you're leaving behind. Literally, you'll save them thousands in court issues, legal stuff, inheritance tax payments, all of these things, etc. There's an article written in 2017, and the average cost of dying without a will comes to about £10,000. 9,700 was the figure they quoted in the Times, the paper. But basically, it's about £10,000. They have to do this, they have to do that. Most people, and this is the problem, most people don't realize there's things that are set in place like inheritance tax. There's gift tax. So inheritance tax is basically 40%. Now it has conditions, but what it means is when you die, the estate that you leave, it will only apply if you have higher than 325,000. So think about this. If you leave behind a house and you leave behind some cash or something like that, and it comes to more than 325,000, then they will charge you 40% inheritance tax on that. There's obviously different rules here and there. If you have a spouse, then it affects the threshold. You can double the figure, etc. If you give 10% in charity, it affects it. It's a little more complex, but basically in a very kind of simple way, if your estate, what you leave behind is £500,000, and you're basically the tax comes from £325,000, so you will be charged 40% inheritance tax, everything above £325,000, which is £175,000. Does that make sense? You have £500,000. The threshold is £325,000. So between your 500,000 and the 325,000 is £175,000. You will be taxed 40% on this. That's going to be £70,000 tax to the government. Where are you going to get this kind of money from? Because it's not liquid, it's not in assets or this and that. It's usually in a building or something. It's in assets, it's in a building, or you've got a house or something like that. So where are you going to get that £70,000 from? And then you have things like gift tax, right? Gift tax is, again, so for example, if you give money to somebody, you give a certain amount of money to somebody, and let's say you give them, to avoid this inheritance tax, you give £100,000 to a family member. If you pass away within 3 years, then you still have to give 40% on that. And if you pass away and then it decreases. So if you pass away, you give this £100,000 as a gift to a family member. You pass away 4 years later, you have to give 32% tax. 5 years later, 24%, and it goes down until 7 years. The point I'm making is it's actually more complex than you think. And the reason I'm saying this is because point number two is you will save your inheritors a good amount of money. If you plan properly and you think about this properly and you go about it properly with the right people and the right guidance and the right advice, you will save a lot of money for your inheritors, right? So that's two reasons. Reason number one, you'll avoid disagreements amongst family, kickoffs, fights, all of these things. Reason number two, there's a lot of complications that come within leaving a will, which if you do it properly, you'll avoid all of this, inshallah. Reason number three, along with your inheritance is the guardianship of your children. That is left to the family courts. Now, if you want to decide who you leave as the guardian of your children, then you want to make sure you put that in your will. Otherwise, they may decide somebody that you're not happy with to be the guardian of your child. And so you can stipulate that the guardian of my child will be this person. And so you can stipulate that. Otherwise, there might be somebody in one of your families who will end up getting that responsibility, and you might not be happy with that. Reason number 4: if you're not legally married, you're not married, etc. You've done your nikah, Islamically you've done your nikah, but you're not legally married. You've not done the civil certificate and all of these things. Then, if you pass away, that individual won't get anything. If you pass away and you leave it to the domestic law, that individual won't get anything because they're not your spouse, they're not your this or that. There'll be complications in that. And so it will also ensure, if you write it in a will, that your spouse will get a share of the family home, etc., etc. Otherwise, she wouldn't have got it. So you want to make sure of this. Reason number 5. Many people don't think about this, but if you have stepchildren or foster children or people who want blood relations, etc., who you have to take care of, they won't inherit from your will. They won't inherit from your will. Foster children, for example, you've raised them in your home as your own kids. When you die, they're not part of the individuals, even according to legally, they won't get your money. And so you need to make sure that you like I said to you, you have 2/3, 2 chunks of the wealth. Allah chooses what happens with that wealth. But there's 1/3 that you have out of your wealth, which you can choose what you do with that. And so you can say that, look, all my other children will get this much. And so from that 1/3, I'll see if I can fix that amount for this foster child or something like that. Or you leave something for the foster child or stepchildren, etc. And finally, the good reason also is it gives you a chance to reflect on death, to really think about death. And it brings it as a reality that, look, there were some scholars that I know who used to put their will underneath their pillow. And he was as a reminder to them that it's not, nothing's yours. If you die tomorrow, everything you own doesn't belong to you. Right? So that's a summary of why we need a will and the importance of having a will and the benefits from this world. What's the options? What options do I have now in terms of making a will and putting a will together? So here's a few kind of options that we have, inshallah. I'll go through pros and cons, and inshallah, let's look at it like that. So the first option, and by the way, all the links of the things that I'm mentioning now, I'm going to put it on the live. So I'm going to put it on the live, right? So the first thing that's going up is just gone up is the free Islamic will one, right? And so I'll explain every bit of document that I sent through. So we're going to go through the free Islamic wills first. I've sent 2 links there. Oh, I sent 2 of the same one. Sorry, let me change that. Send the link. Send that. Let's see if I can get over that comment. The second one. Yeah, perfect. So you've got 2 links in front of you. I'll explain what the links are, inshallah. So they're both free Islamic wills. The first one is Free Islamic Wills, which is a very well-known company, etc. They do free Islamic wills. You basically put your own will together. The second one is from First Ethical, a very good Islamic company. They basically put together how a person puts their wills together, etc. Now look, let's go through the pros and cons of doing it this way. The pros, obviously, it's free. Secondly, it will take you within 30 minutes. Within half an hour or so, you can get your will together. Okay. Now, the first ethical version that I've put up there, it's actually been reviewed by lawyers and it's been reviewed by scholars and signed off. So that you don't have to worry about from that kind of perspective. It's actually been taken seriously by lawyers and scholars, etc. So you can trust, and both of them. Even the Free Islamic Wills one, it's been reviewed and signed off by a scholar. The first ethical one was a bunch of lawyers and scholars. The Free Islamic Wills one, which is the first one, has been signed off by a scholar. Listen, if your estate is within the £325,000, they call it the nil rate band, but we won't call it that. We'll basically say the threshold. Remember, £325,000 plus, you might have to give inheritance tax, 40%. 325,000 and less, you don't have to give inheritance tax. So if your estate, if what you own right now is less than £325,000, you don't need to worry about tax planning and this and that and all of these things. You can get away with it. And by the way, a lot of the time you can get away with up to 1 million without tax. If you, with your family, etc. If you have a wife, it doubles the amount, etc., etc. But so if it's a basic will that you need to put together, the free ones, the 2 free ones, are a good option. The issues is, so that's the pros. What's the cons? The cons are your will isn't checked. Majority of the time you don't need it to be checked, especially if you're one of these individuals who has less than 325,000 pounds. But a lot of the times it can go wrong, and so you want to get it checked. So that's the con. And another issue is no one's going to give you a breakdown of your Sharia inheritors, and so you'll basically have to do it yourself via a calculator. So for example, you'll have to sit down and you'll have to work out, okay, well, this is what I own, and so if I this is what I own, then, well, I don't know the Islamic ruling on who's getting what. So then you have to go and do a bit of digging, ask somebody or this, or go to a scholar, and he'll say, well, the brother gets this, the sister gets this, but then if there's a son, then there's no good, the grandson gets nothing. There's a daughter, the granddaughter gets nothing. And so you're there trying to put all this in your mind, and then you're trying to calculate it, and then you basically write percentages. So the brother gets this, the sister gets this, the uncle gets this, whatever, and then it changes because somebody else comes in the family, or you have a new change, or you have a child. All of these things are happening, and so you have to keep updating it. You have to keep updating it, right? Also, your specific, you have the 2/3 and the 1/3. You might have made a mistake with the 1/3 or something like that, where you've messed up in something like that. So there's a number of difficulties. Another difficulty and a complication that comes is large. You obviously can't do the tax planning. Yeah, if you're above 325,000 pounds, then that's going to be a difficulty. Business assets is going to be a difficulty. If it's foreign assets, it becomes much more complicated. There's a lot more rules involved in foreign assets, etc. And so, and if things change, you need to write a new will, etc. And so, also, if you have disabled children, because then you have to put together a trust or something like that, and so then there's complications there. So the free wills is generally for that person who's maybe a student, or we'll come on to who it comes to, and etc., or who's advised. So that's the first option that we have. A free will is 2 free wills that are presented there, and a person can use these, inshallah. The second type of will that I'm going to present before you guys, which is the next link, which I'm going to send. So I'm going to send that now. That's there. So this next will, what's this next will about? This is from IFG Wills, Islamic Finance Guru. Now, a number of individuals have advised this to me. They've advised this to me. I'm not being paid, by the way. This isn't a paid promotion or something. I promise you, there's no endorsements here. But I'm saying that this Islamic Finance Guru, let me explain the pros and cons. So the pros, it's cheap. It's £98 to put your will together. Right, so that's cheap. Some people think that's expensive. I've spoken to, but I think that's relatively weak to have your will put together. They can do it within 30 minutes, and the will be drafted and checked by lawyers. So they'll be checked by lawyers, etc., and there'll be individuals, and then the Sharia inheritance is reviewed and signed off by a mufti. So they'll get a Islamic scholar so from a legal perspective, they'll have lawyers check through it. And then from a Sharia compliance perspective, they'll make sure it's signed and reviewed by a mufti. And if it's within the 325,000 pounds, you don't have to worry about anything. But like I said, up to £1 million, they will give you assistance in this regard. That's the pros. What's the cons? The problems with this specific model is obviously they won't be able to deal with large estates that need tax planning. Have a conversation with them. It's worth having a conversation with them. But the ones that need tax planning, etc., as far as I know, they don't do that. Along with that, business assets. Along with that, the if it's foreign currency, etc., all of that stuff. They don't provide a hotline or something like that for you to contact them, but they do respond via email. And disabled children, leaving assets and building a trust for disabled children, they don't do that. But the benefit of this one is it's cheap. You can basically have have it drafted by lawyers and have it drafted by a mufti from the Islamic perspective, and khalas, and you don't have to worry about that. They will take care of that, even the execution of that. The last option, which is the final option I'm presenting, which I'll also send the link now, and I'll also mention which one is best for which person. And so that's the next link that I've just sent now, is iWill Solicitors. Now, they're probably the most established Islamic will solicitors in the UK that I know of. Most people will have heard of iWill Solicitors. What's the pros? These guys provide bespoke legal advice. They will have a solicitor sit down with you and go through everything. No messing about. They can deal with large estates. They can deal with large estates that need tax planning. We're talking more than £1 million, etc. They can deal with estates comprising business assets and all of these things. Generally, you can call them up and get some legal advice from them as well in regard to these things. They'll offer a probate service. And so all the relevant applications to the relevant people, I think they only charge a few £100 extra for that specific probate service. They'll offer a professional executor uh, for the service. So the solicitors will basically make a bit of profit, and that it will be a fee as a percentage of the overall estate. This is where the cons come in. It's much, much more expensive. It's much, much more expensive. You got to think about this. If your estate is worth 1.5 million, 2 million, something like that, and they say we only want 2%, that's a big chunk they're taking. 2% of 2 million is a big chunk. I'm giving an example. Remember, especially in London, houses are worth quite a bit. If you've got a house which you own, and that in and of itself might come to 1 million or something like that. And so if somebody says that I want 1% or 2%, it's going to be quite a bit. And so one of the biggest issues with IWIL solicitors, which people mention, is they're expensive. Right? It could go from a couple of hundred to a couple of in the thousands. I know somebody who came complaining to me about IWIL solicitors, saying that they're too expensive. They don't hide it. They do say that they are expensive, but that's a con. Not saying they're conning people. I'm saying pros and cons. So con meaning it's a negative. I'm not saying they're conning people. SubhanAllah, you have to clarify it. Imagine somebody now takes that snipper out and says, "Oh, they're conning." No. It's basically a negative. It's expensive. Another issue is obviously if you're busy or this, you're going to have to go in and speak to solicitors. So you're going to have to make legal appointments and meetings and all of this. Some people will see this as a positive. Some people see that as a negative. Not every solicitor, from what I've understood and what I've asked, not every solicitor will check with a mufti, right? And not all of them will provide a breakdown of your inheritance. Ask. Don't take it from me. Ask. Say to if you're willing to go with them, say that will you have it checked by a mufti. All of these things, I'm just presenting some to get you off the ground, basically, to get you moving. And so that's kind of the cons. So let's wrap this up now. What kind of a will should you opt for? You've got three options. You've got free, but it's DIY. You got to do it yourself. Or you've got on the other side, you've got the expensive one. It'll be no headache. Or you've got the middle kind of one, which is minimal charge, and it covers the majority of issues, but not everything. So here's my advice. If you're wealthy, you're leaving over 1 million, or you might have extensive overseas assets, or you have unique requirements that you need, like a bespoke assistance, like a disabled child or something like that. So one of these three, you're leaving a big amount of money, or you have extensive assets overseas, a lot of your money is overseas, or you need to cater for a disabled child or something like that and create some sort of a trust or something like that. And you might want to actually consider a proper sit down with a solicitor and consider your options. You'll be paying more, but remember, you'll make a significant amount of saving as well. Because if you're paying more, the reason you're paying more is because they're going to make sure you avoid this, you avoid that 40% you'll avoid. And so you'll make savings. And so you got to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Right? So, okay, so that's the first option. You're left with now the two other options. What's the two other options? We've done the expensive one. Who that's for? You've got the free option and you've got the one with minimal charge, the £98 one. Let's do the free one. The free one makes sense for two types of people. That person who's leaving an extremely simple will. So they're single, they're not leaving any complicated stuff. They don't have children. Probably they don't have many assets. Maybe a student or something like that. For you, it's perfect just to make a will like that. So for a student of some sort, a basic will like this, you can go to any of those two links and they'll show you basically what you need to put together. Because you'll probably only have cash, really. That's all you'll have, and maybe your clothes and this and that. But that, you understand what I'm saying? And so you just have to make a basic, simple will. The second type of person that I want to use is somebody who has legal training, or they have access to good legal training, and they're confident on the legal system, and they also have access to good scholars. They might want to do it themselves. So if you're confident in that, you've got somebody who will go through it. You've got a friend or somebody who's a lawyer who works with tax, etc., and they know how the tax system works. So then you can say to this individual, "That fine, let's do it like this." And so you might want to do it like that. So generally, students, etc., will take the free option. Then finally, there's the final option, which is the middle one, which you're worried of messing up by doing it DIY, but you don't also want to pay the expensive cost of a solicitor. For that person, the middle ground is probably the best option, where you go to somebody who's going to kind of they're going to take a nominal charge, £98, but they will do this service for you, inshallah. So in terms of wills, that's, I think, the best summary that I can provide. Inshallah, that will kind of cover the discussions on a will. So again, everybody should be thinking about a will. Everybody should put together a will. And again, it's one of those things. Inshallah, it will remind you of the hereafter. Also, it will get a person connected. So that's kind of a summary in regard to the will. There's a question here: to what extent should? Oh, sorry. How about how many people do you need for a Jumu'ah? For Jumu'ah, according to the Hanafi, there's difference of opinion. According to the Hanafi school of thought, you need 4 individuals. You need 4 individuals. So one imam and 3 people behind the imam. So one imam and 3 people behind the imam. They have to be baligh, mature males. However, scholars advise that in the home you don't perform Jum'ah. In the home you don't perform Jum'ah. Jum'ah is best performed in the masjid. And so at home, in a situation like this, like we mentioned last week, a person should perform a dhuhr salah, etc. To what extent should one verify forwarded messages, and what is the consequence of forwarding messages without verifying but done with good intention from an Islamic perspective? We touched on this last week, I think we did touch on this last week, but let's touch on it briefly. Again, there's a hadith of the Prophet what's the hadith of the Prophet yani somebody yani forwarding whatever you hear, kafa bil mar'i kadhiban, it's sufficient to deem an individual a liar, يحدث بكل ما سمع, that he narrates anything and everything he hears. Somebody says something to you, you say, yeah, this happened. Somebody says something to you, you say, this happened. So just passing on information. A person should verify everything that comes to them. Again, you don't need me to say this. Everybody's been saying this. We've discussed it in our Bidayatul Hidayah classes. You got to verify. You've got to verify everything that comes your way. Don't just forward something because it looks cool or something like that. It might look like it. Like there's an incident I saw where somebody basically was breaking into a shop, and it was in Poland. They're breaking into a shop, and then they tried breaking into the shop. They couldn't get into the shop, so they tried running off. They got into the street, and a car ran them over. Fine. I saw this maybe 6, 7, 8 months ago. Recently, somebody showed me that, oh, look, this person tried to break into the masjid, and then he was trying to break into the masjid. He failed, and so then he ran into the street and he got run over. I said, no, I don't think that's what happened. I think it happened. I remember seeing this on a news article. And so it actually happened in Poland, and he was trying to break into a shop. People will turn it, and people will just see a video and say, this is what happened. And you're like, what can you trust? Especially on WhatsApp, what can you trust? I think WhatsApp put up a new update recently, isn't it? That you can't forward to X number of people or something. You can only forward to 2 or 3 or something like that number of people. And so that was quite interesting. Even WhatsApp's kind of getting involved in this. But again, don't forward everything you hear, even if your intention is good. You have to think perspective. You know, for example, for example, their family members have passed away or something through COVID-19 or something, and you're there and you start taking a video of this individual and tell people, look, brothers, make sure you're careful, otherwise this will happen to you. So your intention is good. You want to pass this on to people and say, be careful, stay in the homes. But you got to think about the ethical side of stuff as well, that this person probably doesn't want to be videoed. Their family is grieving and mourning at the moment, and you think this is the time for you to start making a video about this. So ethically, you have to consider your options as well. So you have to be careful in these kind of things as well. Does إنما الأعمال بالنيات apply to this? إنما الأعمال بالنيات. So again, yes, actions are according to intentions in terms of reward. So the intentions that you make will make a big difference on the actions. There's no doubting that. But again, you have to think beyond just the intention is important, but you have to make sure your action is good. Sometimes you intend something good, but you do something wrong. You understand? I'll give you an example. Robin Hood, the concept of Robin Hood. It's when you read the story of Robin Hood, you think it's an amazing thing. He's taking from the rich and giving to the poor. But the question is that we're talking from an Islamic perspective. The story is amazing and it teaches people to be, generous and fair and all of these things. But from an Islamic perspective, you got to think about this: the people who are rich, did they earn that money properly or not? That's the question. And so you can't go and steal money from somebody who's rich and then give it to them. It's like me walking into a bank and robbing the bank and coming out and saying, I'm going to give it into charity or something like that. That's not how it works. And it's not your rights. And so innamal a'malu bin niyat it's not always down to your intention if the action itself is wrong. And this is where knowledge comes in, that you might have the most amazing of intention, but you're doing something wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so innamal a'malu bin niyat over here is saying that you'll be rewarded for your actions in accordance to your intentions. You have a good intention, Allah will reward you for that. But make sure that the action that you do to fulfill that objective and that goal is within the remit of Sharia, is within the Islamic framework. Otherwise, then it's going to fall under a sin. You understand? So inshallah that will answer that. There's a couple of other questions I received as well. I don't know if we should go through them now or we should see, because it's quite technical. Let me take a look through the list of questions. So let's take a, what is the Islamic stance on universal basic income? Universal basic income. I think that one. I think it's Abdul Salam Bhai, isn't it? Let me take a look. Abdul Salam Bhai. Abdul Salam Bhai. I'll mention that one next week. I'll mention that one next week. I'd want to take a look at that one before I get into that. So there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and the scholars say as well that it's part of knowledge to say la adri. Yani when you don't know, you say yani I don't know. I'll get back to you on that one. So inshallah, that one we'll touch on next week, inshallah. So the Islamic stance on universal basic income. I'll touch on that next week, inshallah. There was a story, and the main reason many individuals won't say I don't know is because they're worried about what people will say. That what do you mean you don't know any scholar and this and that. It happens. It happens. I was reading there's an individual. I think his name is Juha. Juha is an individual in the Islamic history in Arab who he has some funny stories. And he was known to be foolish. So I'll give you one of his stories. And he was traveling with his son, and they were traveling with a donkey. They had a donkey of theirs. So they were traveling, the son, Juha, the father, and this donkey. As they're traveling, what happened was Juha was sat on the animal, and his son was walking. So they were traveling. They walked past a few people, and the few people looked at him and said, "Look at that Juha. He sat on the animal, and the son is walking. What an oppressive father he is." So Juha thought, "Nah, that's a good point, you know." So Juha gets off the donkey, and puts his son on the donkey. So they carry on walking. They carry on walking. They carry on walking. As they carry on walking, a few other people later on, they see them and they say, "Look at this. The son, he's on the donkey and the father is walking. What is this? The father should be teaching the son that you walk and I should be sitting." So Juha thought, "Oh man, people just don't stop criticizing me." So both of them sat on the donkey. So both of them are now sat on the donkey, and they carry on. They come across some people, and the people say to them, "Oh, look at these guys, man. Both of them are sat on the donkey. Look how oppressive they are. They're bullying the donkey now." And before it was this, now it's both of them shouldn't be sat on it. So Juha goes out. That's it. Both of us off the donkey, and both of us walk. So all three of them are walking. The donkey, Juha, and his son are walking. People walk past. After a little while, they say, "Hey, what's wrong, man? They've got a donkey. One of them should at least sit on it, but none of them are sitting on it." So one of the incidents here that Juha thought that, "What do you want me to do? Put the donkey on my head and walk with the donkey?" And so people will always criticize. People have criticism. It just came to my mind, Yani, from the side point. But Juha, there's a lot of stories about Juha, a lot of funny stories about Juha as an individual. Um, You'll find them in Arabic, and you probably even find them in English, to be honest. He's one of those kind of people who they'll write fables on. So, Aesop's fables and stuff like that. So Juha probably has his own storybook or something like that. There was one time he lost his donkey. He was known to be with his donkey. He once lost his donkey, and so he said that if I find the donkey, I'll sell it for 1 dinar, so very, very cheap. So he basically he found the donkey. So I thought, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to sell this donkey now and for 1 dinar." So then what he decided to do is he went and got a cat. He bought a cat and he tied the cat to the donkey. And he went to the marketplace and he says, "I'm selling the donkey for 1 dinar. However, I'm also selling the cat, and you have to buy the cat with the donkey, and the cat is for 100 dirhams." So something like that. And so that's what he was saying. So subhanAllah. Yahya, who is eligible to lead Salah? Leading Salah, okay, so in regard to leading Salah, the scholars have a difference of opinion. Generally speaking, the one who knows the most about the Quran. So there's difference of opinion. Is it whether the one who knows the most Quran and he's in the most hifd of the Quran, or is it the individual who knows the most sunnah and the ahadith and all of these things? Inshallah, generally speaking, in the home, the father should lead. Generally speaking, the father of the house should lead. The imam should be the main person in the home, and so the father should lead. Otherwise, sometimes the father can put the son forward. he can put the son forward because of whatever reason, or you need to basically let him get practice or something like that. So if the father wants the child to lead, then the child should lead, especially for practice, etc. And sometimes the father, and he feels that the son's recitation is better than his, so he'll put the son forward, etc. So in all these scenarios, generally speaking, the one who has the most knowledge, even if they're young. And amongst the companions, the Prophet ﷺ, when a group of individuals came to meet the Prophet ﷺ, and they'd accepted Islam, and he sent them back to their people, he said to them, they asked the Prophet ﷺ that who should lead the salah amongst us. So he says, who is aqra'ukum? Who is the one who knows the most Quran? And so it was a young boy, they said, this young boy. And so they said to this young boy that you have to lead the salah. And so this young boy who went back and he was to lead the salah, his clothing was very tattered and this and that. And so they gave him a brand new piece of clothing as the imam. And so he got really excited and was like, "Oh, subhanallah!" And I think the narration mentioned that he goes, "It was the best day of my life when I got this this new piece of clothing." And so generally, if somebody etc. is young, but obviously baligh etc., they've reached the age of maturity, they can lead salah as well. There's no issues in that. Came across a message regarding common mistakes in salah where the Shaykh says a common mistake is in Surah Fatiha to say "Iyaka na'budu" instead of "Iyaka na'budu" without the shaddan "Iyaka." Yeah, as in you can change the meaning. Iyaka. There's many mistakes people make in the salah, etc. For example, I'll give you one example that scholars generally mention. So in wudu, the common mistakes that people make in the wudu is the elbows and the ankles they leave dry, so they don't wash them properly, etc. The face, this part between just before the ear. Many people don't wash this part as well, so that should be washed. In between the eye area, that usually gets left dry, and so that should be washed. And so in wudu, there's those common mistakes. In salah, there's a bunch of common mistakes as well. So, for example, a common mistake in salah is the takbir tahrim, Allahu Akbar. It should be said audibly, not loud as in screaming and shouting, but Allahu Akbar. And you can hear it, you can even whisper it, but you should be able to hear it. That's one thing. A lot of the time, when people go from ruku' to qiyam, and then before they go into sajda. So when you're in ruku', when you stand up, many people just go Sami Allahu liman hamidah and then go straight into sajda. So you should pause for a little while there. You should pause Rabbana lakal hamd and then go into sajda. Between the two sajdas, between the two sujood, sometimes people go from sajda, sit up and go straight back down. You should pause in that period called jalsa. Jalsa is what it's called. And there's du'as you can read as well in that position between the two sajdas. Allahumma ghfirli warhamni wa'afini wahdini warzuqni, whatever. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhab an-nar, something like that. Whatever du'as, even in that time, you should take use of that period of time. And like I've said, salah is one of those that you need to perfect. You need to spend time, you need to make effort on, learn how to perform your salah properly. Really, salah, it shouldn't be just emotions and the up and down and this and that. I mentioned this quite extensively yesterday in the live session, the beginning of guidance, regarding our salah and the importance of getting our salah to a good standard, not just from the external but from the internal dimensions as well. What's the ruling for a man or woman to dye their hair a silly color such that would lose dignity among people? For example, dyeing it completely pink or purple or green, etc. Dyeing the hair a silly color. Look, again, I always say this, right? In regard to dyeing the hair, etc., in different colors, it's permissible. However, social norms should be taken into consideration. Social norms should be taken into consideration. Never put yourself. Look, the problem isn't with you. The problem is with people's assumptions. If you dress in a certain way, people will assume things about you. People will have this. Again, it's not your fault. It's the expectations and the assumptions of people. And one of the advices that the scholars give is ittaqu mawadi' at-tuham. Avoid putting yourself in a situation or a position where people can accuse you of things. If you dress in a certain way and you walk into the masjid dressed in a certain way, or you dress outside in a certain way, people will say things. And even if it's dressed in a proper way, and people will question you and people will assume things about you. You never want people to assume things about you. You never want to give people an excuse to assume things about you. So ethically, you should hold yourself to a high standard. If in society, if in that community, it's seen as something which is not good or something which is ill-advised, a person should avoid that. A person should really avoid that. If it's in the privacy of your home, etc., and it's something that's different. But I'm saying that in a situation where people are looking down at it, like there's many examples you can give of this, but again, you'll understand inshallah from the context that I'm saying. And so it's not haram as such to do that, but again, it's definitely ill-advised. And I'm telling you, we shouldn't be individuals who ask just is it haram. Ethically start asking questions as well. Ask yourself why is Islam advising against it? If it says it's makruh or something, ask yourself why. What's the reason? Is it for my benefit or is it for my harm? Does Islam want me to prosper in my society, in my community, amongst people? You see, you might do something now and you might think, hey, especially as youngsters, we feel this rebellion. But listen, if it's not wrong, I don't care what people think and this and that. But hey, listen, yani, when the time comes, maybe you don't know what position Allah will put you in. You never know how Allah will elevate you and put you in a position of authority. And now you have to advise people and this and that. And people are, he's that guy, he's that guy. And you want to keep your slate clean. And so my advice for this individual is there's so many colors you can dye your hair. And generally speaking, yani, why? Khair, yani, I can see but there's no need. There's no need. Yani, Allah's given you hair. Do shukr on that. Hey, at least we have hair. Many people don't even have hair. So alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. But in terms of the permissibility, look, it's not haram. Scholars won't say it's haram. But you should avoid it if that's something which is seen as a negative, etc. And it's for your own good. Really, it's for your own good. You might think that, oh, come on, man. But I'm telling you, it's for your own good, inshallah. Try and keep into consideration social norms when it comes to things like this as well. Take into consideration social norms. Like, I'll give you an example. What's wrong with picking your nose? Like, really, think about it. Like, if you pick your nose and then you get a tissue and you wipe your thingy with a tissue properly, it's the same as putting the tissue in your nose. What's the difference? You basically imagine you have a wet wipe. You put your finger in your nose, you clean your nose, and then you clean it with a wet wipe. What's wrong with that? It's hygienic. Everything's fine. What's the issue with that? But it won't be seen as something socially acceptable. And so in that instance, just be normal and use a tissue or something like that. Do you understand? And so sometimes there's nothing wrong with something. It might not be haram to pick your nose in public, but socially it's seen as something which is negative. You should avoid it. And I always tell students and scholars, especially students of knowledge, and all of you are students of knowledge, inshallah. You should deem yourselves as students of knowledge, and that's a high status. That's not something small. Every single one of us should work to be a student of knowledge. That's worthy of being. And so a student of knowledge, when it comes to disagreements, try and take the safer approach. Avoid the disagreement. So if somebody is saying there's this or there's this, take the safer approach. As students, that's how we should be, inshallah. And trust me, that will benefit you. It will be for your own good, inshallah. There's iyaka without emphasis, change meaning from you alone worship to some you worship. So the first part, I'm not fully sure. Sun, we worship. I don't know about that. But the second mistake, and if you change the meaning of the Quran in a way, and if you make a mistake in the Quran in a way that it changes the meaning, then that will break the salah. That will nullify the salah. And so you have to be careful. And this is why we always say, and even in the Quran, you'll notice in some places there's a marking where there's a line or something like that, or there's an indication, or they've bolded it or something for you to be careful and you don't make a mistake here. Because certain places, like for example, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ. So again, if you change that, you put it forward and backward, you entirely change the meaning. For the Arabic students, you make the fa'il the maf'ul instead of the maf'ul the fa'il, etc. Basically, you make the doer somebody else. So وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ. Dawudu, the U sound basically means he's the guy who's doing the action. So qatala, he killed. Who killed Dawood? Dawood killed. Who did he kill? Jalut. He killed Jaluta. The ta sound makes it mean that who was killed. If you change it and you say وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودَ جَالُوتُ نَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ, you change the meaning. You change the entire story actually. You're basically saying now Jalut killed Dawood. So obviously that's where the problem comes in. And so changing a meaning like that, where you're changing an entire story or something like that, that's going to be problematic from an Islamic perspective, and a person should avoid this. And that will break the salah. And this is why I'm massively emphasizing this. Take this opportunity to study the Arabic language. Whilst you're at home, whilst you're this, whilst you're that, there's so many online resources you can use. Bayyina, for example, Noman Ali Khan has his Bayyina. He does his Arabic with Husna, or there's the online ones, the Medina University ones that they're doing at the moment. There's online English ones, etc. There's so many different ones, the Medina ones, the books that they do. Durusul Lughat al-Arabiya, there's that one as well. So if somebody just asks in the comments or something, I'll just remind me afterwards. I'll basically send links and stuff as well, inshallah. But there's so much accessible Arabic content. Get your Quran to a good standard. Try and start learning Arabic as well, and start developing your studies. The problem we have as Muslims is we're too interested in talks and this and that, which are entertaining. And the problem with that is we'll benefit a little bit, but you won't progress as an individual. There should be a structured syllabus, and that's what we're actually currently working on, to create a structured syllabus for Muslims. They start on this, and they go to this, and they go to this, and they go to this, and you don't finish when you finish in madrasa and you finish as a child. You continue your entire life and you continue studying. Imam Ahmad rahmatullah alayhi, Imam Ahmad, a great scholar, he was asked once, he was going with an ink pot. Somebody asked him, how long are you going to keep studying? And you're running with an ink pot and a piece of, how long are you going to keep studying? And so Imam Ahmad rahmatullah alayhi said, from the cradle to the grave. And you continue studying until you enter Jannah. That's when you finish your studies. And so we should be individuals. Like I said to you, we should be students of knowledge. We should be students of knowledge. And that's why we have to study the religion. And so I would say that Arabic is extremely important. Look. If I could have said, and I'm telling you, if I could have said, you can understand the Quran without Arabic, I would have been the first person to say that. I'm telling you, I have a major interest in the English language. I really like the English language, right? If I could have said the words that you can understand and read the Quran with full understanding without the Arabic language, I would have said it. I'll tell you, my professor, when I studied at university, Professor Abdul Halim, he's written possibly one of the most famous translations of the Quran. You know, the most common translation you'll find is Abdul Halim's one at the moment, and many people use that one. So Professor Abdul Halim, he's at SOAS in London. He's mentioned to us in one of his lectures, you cannot understand the Quran without Arabic. You just can't. You'll understand a little bit of meaning or this and that. And I've given so many examples of this in previous lectures, how just changing one thing makes a massive difference. I'll give you an example in Surah Al-Fatiha, yeah? And the Arabic students will be able to understand this. When you say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, you say Alhamd, praise belongs to Allah. All translations will say all praise belongs to Allah. Where the all comes from, we don't get into it. It's something to do with the Alif Lam, the Alhamdu. The point I'll make is this. Hamd, praise, that word used, is an ism. It's an ism. An ism is an idea. Listen to this carefully. Alhamd is used, the word hamd is used, and it's an ism. Isms are not limited to time and place. Just understand this. You'll understand in a minute. Hamd, the word it's an ism, and isms are not limited to time and place. If you don't use an ism, you have to use a fi'l. You have to use a fi'l. A fi'l is another type of word, but the fi'l is limited to time and place. Let me give you an example of a fi'l. Ahmadullah. So instead of Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, you'd say Ahmadullah Rabbil Alameen. Ahmadu means I am praising. So there's two things here. Number one, I am doing the praising. So there's a person. And the second thing is it's limited to a time. I am praising now. I praised yesterday. I will praise tomorrow. You could have said Nahmadullah, we praise Allah. So again, now that the people involved is we, and the situation is now. If Allah used a fi'l, Ahmadullah, Nahmadullah, and I praise or we praise, then what Allah is saying is His praise is limited to this individual at this specific time. And when somebody prays it tomorrow, it's limited to this individual to that specific time. By using an ism, by using something which is timeless and it doesn't need a tense, it's timeless, and it doesn't require a person either. Allah is saying whether you praise, he praises, she praises, we praise, nobody praises, praise belongs to Allah. Whether it's done today, yesterday, tomorrow, the day after, whenever it's done, praise belongs to Allah. See the difference between using an ism and a fa'il. With a fa'il, you limit it, and you'll see you're basically saying that praise belongs to Allah, but only when this guy does it, and when he does it, or when she does it at this time. And when Allah says Alhamdulillah, Allah uses an ism, and He says it's limitless. There is no limitation of people. There's no limitation of time. That's just one word of the Arabic, and that's just the Alhamdu. And we've not even done the technical stuff of Alhamdu, because the Alif Lam is what they call Alif Lam Istighraqiyya, which means not just praise, but all types of praise. Alif Lam specifically indicates every type of praise that exists, whether it's this, whether it's that, whether all forms of praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani, if somebody praises you, even that praise of you belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because what they are praising you for is something which is a result of what Allah has given you. If they're praising you for something you did well, you only were able to do that thing well because Allah gave you the ability. And so that praise in essence belongs to Allah. That's just one bit of that first word of the Arabic language. Imagine the entire Quran. Imagine the entire Quran, how much depth there must be. There's a reason scholars would say that I was worshipping in Tahajjud Salah at night, and I would recite the same verse over and over again. And the scholars would say that reciting the same verse over and over again, but each time I would be opened up to something new about this verse. Allah would open up a new tafsir, a new understanding, or something like that. There's a lot of talk about domestic violence taking place. One of the verses of the Quran which I find amazing is which I read a tafsir of one of the scholars. He says that وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. You see, this is the thing now. When you get on the Arabic discussions, and it doesn't stop, especially the Quran. It's the way Imam Ghazali describes and other scholars. It's an ocean which has no starting. And no starting, meaning once you get into it, you're not going to find a start or finish. You just keep diving deeper. You just keep going, and it's just ajib. And of course, it would be because Allah Himself is eternal, and so the Book of Allah will be eternal in what it has and contains in gems. So, what was I saying? Yeah, so there's a lot of discussions at the moment on domestic violence because people are home, etc. There's a verse of the Quran, وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. The weakest of homes is the home of the spider. Now, many people will read this and think, oh, why is Allah telling us this? What's the point of Allah telling us the weakest of homes is the home of the spider? Like, we know our web is weak, but what benefit does that give us? And so scholars have had lots of discussions on this. They say that this or this or this or that, and they put it into the context or this and that. One of the explanations, which is a more recent explanation, is the scholars actually studied insects, etc. And they said that, look, there are certain spiders, like the black widow spider or the crab spider, etc., that when the male and the female they copulate and they have the relations, the female will consume the male, entirely consume and eat the male, and then for sustenance, etc. And when the mother gives birth, she will eat certain of her eggs, etc., to keep alive. And then when those eggs are hatch, etc., and they become spiders, they will eat the mother. So the weakest of homes is the home of the spider. In this kind of story that I just presented before you, you could define this as domestic violence. That somebody in this house is being oppressed, and somebody else is being oppressed, and somebody else is being oppressed. Some scholars have indicated this verse is saying the weakest of homes is the home of the spider, is saying the weakest of homes is the home wherein domestic violence takes place. So you see the link, and the way the Quran is so special, that the weakest of homes is the home wherein the rights of somebody are infringed upon, where you don't give the rights to somebody that deserves the rights. And now you'll realize, especially youngsters, when Allah mentions a bee or Allah mentions a cow or Allah mentions random things in the Quran, they have their wisdom. They have deep wisdom. We just don't understand it. Somebody will come to you and say, you have a chapter of the Quran called Al-Baqarah, the cow? What's wrong with you? You have a chapter of the Quran, An-Nahl, the bee? What's that all about? Until you don't read the Quran in depth and understand the Quran in depth, translation will help a little bit. It will definitely help, and it will definitely assist to understand the word of Allah. But the depth that you don't get without the Arabic. I wish I could say to you, you will understand the Quran with English. Now, what would you rather do? Sit here listening to me explain it, or sit and read what the scholars have written about it and see it for yourself? That's what we should be aiming towards, and that's one of the objectives of our Arabic intensive. It's interesting is the Arabic intensive students, I don't think they even realize that this half term they were actually meant to have off. But ajib, they're not even doing their stuff properly, so we continue in classes, alhamdulillah. What are the things you can lie about? Yahya, what are the things you can lie about? Look, there's a number of things that scholars have mentioned you can lie about. So obviously lying is a major sin. Allah mentions in the Quran, wailul mukaddibin, destruction beyond those who lie. So a person should avoid lying. There are some instances where you can lie from the ahadith. For example, to reconcile between two people. That a friend of yours is in an argument with another friend, so you go to this friend and say, hey, you know what? He was actually speaking to me the other day, and he was saying that he regrets kind of what happened, and he was saying good stuff about you, saying that you're a good guy. And then you go to this guy and say, hey, he was actually praising you, he was saying that you're a good guy and this and that. And so then you kind of, then the next time they see each other, they'll be a bit more relaxed and they'll kind of make friends. And so to bring two people together. Another instance is, for example, somebody says to, hey, look, promise you won't tell anybody this, and they'll tell you something. For example, I'm going to go basically scratch this guy's car, or I'm going to pop his tire or something like that. And And so when you hear this, you promise that you wouldn't tell that you wouldn't say a word, but in this instance, you're allowed to lie, and you're allowed to go and tell that person that this harm is coming towards you or something like that. So there are a number of instances. Imam Nawawi, I think he mentions 4 or 5 instances where a person is permitted to lie, etc. Um, but again, um, uh, lying is one of the lowest forms of kind of conversation. uh, if you do something, you should have the conviction to say that I did it, and own up, and that's very important, having that conviction. Otherwise, don't do it. Never put yourself, like Imam Ghazali mentioned, never put yourself in a situation where you have to lie. Why would you put yourself in that situation? Put yourself in situations where you don't have to lie, etc., and save yourself from that. And we'll conclude on one more question: is there a recommended amount you should read of the Quran daily? Um, okay. Generally, the scholars will say for the Hafiz, for the person who's done Hifz of the Quran, 3 juz a day. And for the non Hafiz, it's 1 juz a day. But I'll go and say this a step further. The thing is, for some people, 1 juz is too much to read an entire juz. By the way, it's not a lot. It's not a lot. A juz you can read within half an hour if you're reading slowly. If you have a good pace, within 15 to 20 minutes, you can read a juz, right? Here's what I would advise: fix a time daily. Listen, you cannot do anything in life without doing 3 things. Number one, fix the action. Fix how much you're going to pray. So fix, for example, I'm going to read 1 juz, or fix I'm going to pray a half a juz, or fix something, some amount. Fix that amount. Number two, fix the time. If you don't fix the time, you'll keep saying later on, why did Allah not just say go read 5 times salah? Why did Allah say kitaban mawquta, that the salah is at fixed times? Because He knows our temperament. And imagine if you left your fajr, dhuhr, asr, maghrib, isha till night time, and then you come and you read 2 sunnah of fajr, and you 2 farad, and then you read the 4 sunnah of dhuhr, and 4 farad of dhuhr, and 2 sunnah, and then you do the 4 sunnah of asr, and 4 farad of asr, and then maghrib, and then isha. You're not going to do it. Allah is teaching us. You've got to fix in every aspect of life. You don't just say we'll have a meeting at work whenever everybody. No, you'll fix a time, you'll fix a day, you'll fix a location. You say this is the time the meeting is going to take place, and then you be there. If you don't be there, then you make sure you catch up on the minutes. So you make sure that you exactly the same way. And if you fix a time for yourself, I'm going to pray this. I'm going to read this much Quran at this time, and you got to fix that amount, and you got to be there. And you got to make sure that everybody knows that. The Arabic class students, I told them as well, everybody in your circle, your friends, your family, everybody should know Monday, Tuesday, Thursday is my Arabic class days. You don't get in the way of that. If you have you want to do a family event, you want to do a party, you want to do this, fine, but not in my Arabic class time. And you tell people in advance, you let the world know that this is this time. People should know that between this time to this time, you don't interrupt this person. No matter what it is, he's busy, he's in his class. So there's people I know who come to certain of the classes, their family knows that on a Friday evening, they will attend this class. If there's anything else, that's the family's fault. You knew he has this class, you should have respected that. And so fix that and let people know around you that this is the time for this. And so there's a couple of ways you can do this. Tell the entire family. Entire family at this time will be reading Quran. And they don't have to read for Quran for as long as you do. They have their fixed amount, 2 sides, fantastic. You read your 2 sides and you go. I'll read my amount and I'll go. So number one, fix an amount, whatever that amount is. Number two, fix the time. And number three, when the time comes, force yourself. There is no cure to laziness. There is no cure to laziness other than doing it. I'm telling you, yes, you can have friends who will motivate you and this and that, so you can create motivational things. Somebody helps you, somebody pushes you, somebody makes you feel guilty or something like that, guilt trips you, etc., whatever. But you have to get up and do it. You have to get up and do it. And the Quran is such a, and I'll go a step further, and I've heard from one of my teachers, if you cannot do 1 juz, you cannot do half a juz, you cannot do 1 ruku', minimum 1 verse daily. Minimum. And I'll tell you the beauty of the Quran. You'll open up that 1 verse, you read A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, close the Quran. You probably won't close the Quran. You'll say, let me just finish Surah Al-Fatiha. You'll finish Surah Al-Fatiha, then you'll close the Quran. Next, the hardest thing is opening the Quran. So tell yourself, minimum 1 ayah. Everybody make this intention, inshallah. Minimum 1 ayah. That doesn't mean, that means you do wudu, you probably sit down and you open up the Quran. If it's on your mobile, do not read Quran on your mobile unless it's airplane mode. You gotta put it in airplane mode and then you open up the Quran. Otherwise, you'll get distracted. Message will come, you'll go and check that, you'll see this. Airplane mode. That's why I say to most people, get a physical copy of the Quran and read that, because we don't have this. Sit down and just one ayah. But the beauty of the Quran is that you'll just read till the ruku', or you'll read to the bottom of the page. And one last advice: mark it. Mark where you've read till. If it's a little pencil, you just mark through the circle or something like that. That's fine. Or get a good bookmark or something like that, whatever. But don't wait to get your bookmark, or don't wait to get your Quran and say, I'll start once I get a brand new Quran or this and that. Start with whatever you have. If you have the mobile, get an app. If you don't have an app, then on your laptop, whatever. Start somewhere. That's another thing Shaitan gets us, and university students know this the most. You'll start making notes, and then you'll think, oh no, I messed that up. So you'll cross it out, you'll rip the page out, you'll start fresh, and you'll make a mistake, you'll cross it out, you'll rip it out, start again. You'll never get anything done that way. And so that's why you start, scribble something out, just carry on, no big deal, just carry on, just keep doing what you need to do. Same with the Quran. Don't say, I'm going to buy this Quran, I'm going to do this, when then I'll get started. So I would advise minimum one juz daily. If you can't do that, half a juz, fix that. If you can't do that, a quarter juz, a rubu', you'll see the markings in the Quran. If you can't do that, one ruku'. If you can't do that, every person has to do one ayah a day, one verse of the Quran a day. You will open up the Quran. I promise you, the Quran is such that it will draw you in. And there'll come a time when you'll be addicted to reading the Quran. You just want to read the Quran, and oh, okay, add to that. That's it. Khalas. That answers the question. I'm going to conclude on this one last point. Along with that, translation of the Quran. So if you're saying to yourself half an hour, then 15 minutes for recitation, 15 minutes read the translation of what you read. Read a good translation. There's a number of them, like I mentioned. Inshallah, what I'll do is the next session, if somebody reminds me, I'll send some links for some translations, or maybe just one translation, because sometimes you send 2 or 3 people don't know which one to do. I'll send one translation link that inshallah we can look at, inshallah, and I will end it there, inshallah. As you can see, please can you show by pointing with your hands which hair is on the face? We have to keep meaning which ones to keep this. Inshallah, beard, inshallah we can discuss next week, inshallah, Adam. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our gathering here, inshallah. Again, if 1 or 2 people benefit, it's good enough for us, inshallah. And I benefit from this. That's the biggest thing for me. And I benefit from putting together these things. Like there was a question asked from Abdul Salam, which now I get to go and do a bit of research on the Islamic stance on universal basic income and give a proper answer, So inshallah, I'll also, Yahya, I'll give you Imam Nawawi's list of the things that you can lie about, inshallah. But again, a person should avoid lying as much as he can. خير ان شاء الله. We'll end it there, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.